All right, well, we are top of the hour. It is 9:01. Welcome everyone to the April edition of Lakeside Chats, the number 27 of these crazy events that I came up with 2+ years ago. I am really excited about today's. I feel like I need a new intro. I think I always say I'm really excited about today's thing, but I am really excited about it. And I'll tell you why. I'm excited about it from two lenses. One, in the topic of teams is not something that we've covered on a Lakeside Chat. I feel like it's a concept or an area that we've skirted in some of the other topics that we've brought to the table over the last couple years, but not in a really purposeful, specific way. So and we all know whether you are an independent or not, you're working with a team, you have a family you got to work with. There's teams are happening around you one way or the other. And I'm really excited about the idea that we're able to bring this as a very specific topic that we know everybody is managing at any one given time. But I'm also excited because I get to be here with my friend Sarah, which you're going to learn a lot more about Sarah throughout today. And as many of you who have been on Lakeside Chats before know that I am not great about doing big over exhaustive intros for people. So Sarah's going to get a chance to introduce herself. Before we jump in too far into learning more about Sarah and about the topic, I want to set the stage for rules of engagement for Lakeside Chat. Hopefully we've got some new names that have not been on a chat in the past. So I want to just let you know how these work. One, these are public. I have the recording. Yep, recording is going. So I've double checked myself. They are being recorded. They will be available. So if for some reason you have to pop out or you have somebody that wasn't able to be here that you think should see or hear some of the topics or the conversations that we're having today, they will be available on our website, and I'll make that link available in the follow-up material. You'll get it here in the next probably 24 to 48 hours. I will also send along, I don't always send along the deck, but Sarah's provided so much really great content in today's session that I want to make sure that you have some of the material that's in the deck as well. Also, there might be some additional follow-up materials. I know Sarah's got some there's some materials Sarah might reference. I've recognized that in these chats, people will on the chat start calling out books and stories and articles. I'll calibrate all of that information and put that in the follow-up material as well. So you'll get the deck, a link to the recording, all of the links to the information we're talking about today. Hi, Missy. And I want to just, as Missy, that was why you did that, right? You did that totally apropos. All of these Teams features is we want these to be your way to engage. I call them chats on purpose. It is not just a chat between Sarah and myself. It is a conversation for this 52+ people that are going to be on today's event, for us to be able to conversate and learn from each other. I've brought in what I deem as the expert on the situation, but I think Sarah, you and I will both attest to the fact that neither of us know everything about everything, nor are we the foremost authority on anything. And so this is an opportunity for us to have positive conversation, positive discussion, to show up with some genuine curiosity. We recognize too that there might never be there's really no right answer. There's always multiple ways to look at things. And so at the end of today's session, after an hour of us being together, the goal is information sharing and, like I said, conversation starting. So engage accordingly, use the chat feature, raise your hand, celebrate, do all the things. You'll notice that everybody is in Sarah and my face and voice are the two that are turned on for the event. But if at some point you feel like you need to do a yell out, your mics can be turned off, though I ask you to use that sparingly. All right, are you ready, girl?
I'm ready.
All right. So Sarah, would you like to introduce yourself? I am Erin Hargrove. I'm Director of Business Development here at Lakeside. I'm going to talk about Lakeside and Radiate people here in just a second. I am a big believer that I don't like big, long, exhaustive bios said about me. It makes me uncomfortable. But Sarah, you go long and exhaustive as you want. Tell as much about Sarah Line that we need to know about you.
Oh my, that's so much pressure. I'm also not great at introductions.
Two things or all the things. I don't care.
Right. Well, hello, everybody. I am Sarah Line, and I'm the owner of Boredroom Breakouts, spelled B-O-R-E-D, because I love a good pun and play on words. I love just what you said, Erin, just the learning and the curiosity. While I think neither of us would say that we are experts, I look at any of my favorite leaders in any industry, and they don't proclaim to know anything either. I think that learning and growth always comes through just that constant curiosity. And it is really that curiosity and constant learning and growth that led me to found Boardroom Breakouts. I never set out to be a business owner. I never set out to write a curriculum and what I'm talking about today, but because of my curiosity of my own lived experience, I felt that there was just something missing in this space. So I'm excited to share the learnings of my curiosity with you. And it is my greatest hope that you can take something away from this that will make your team stronger, because I just love and believe in the power of humanity and what we can accomplish together. So if there's anything that I can give you today that just does a little something for you or your team in whatever capacity that team looks like for you. You can have a family team, you can have a work team, whatever that team looks like. I just hope that you can take something away from today.
Right. Well, as Sarah and I were talking about on the pregame to this, I want to also call out that it is Miss Sarah Line's birthday. And it is a big birthday. So Sarah, I am a big believer in happy birthdays, as I have now officially. And if anybody would like to turn their mic off with me, but I'm going to sing, which I'm sure everyone in my husband, but happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Sarah. Happy birthday to you. Thank you, whoever joined me. I love it. But how cool that we get to spend her birthday and how she's sharing her birthday with us as well. I think that's the coolest. So happy birthday. Me and my friend Chad, as many of you know, that's what I call my AI friend, made this for you as your visual birthday. I felt like it was where a boardroom breakout met the adventure component of Sarah. So this is my Sarah birthday wish story for you. Enjoy.
I love it. Send my thanks to Chad.
I will. I'll tell Chad you say thank you. Awesome. Well, I wanted I would be remiss if I didn't quickly talk a little bit about Lakeside. Obviously, Lakeside Chats is founded here by Lakeside. Sarah, you don't need to take yourself off. Our mission at Lakeside is to strengthen small to mid-sized businesses through personalized recruiting and HR consulting solutions. Two sides of our business, recruiting and HR consulting. If you haven't followed us on the social channels, feel free to do so. We've got some really great roles that we're posting and sharing right now, as well as some really great work that we're doing on the consulting side that I'm always really excited about. Our values, and you'll hear them probably throughout the day, because I feel like you've already heard one. I talked about curiosity as well, but we are genuine, curious, scrappy value adders. And you notice I didn't have to look at my screen to be able to say that out loud. Those are intrinsic words that we all use here at Lakeside on a pretty regular basis. So excited to have you here and be a part of the story that we're building. The other thing that I wanted to just add, and I'm just calling it out quickly, Lakeside last year went down a different angle and are the founding sponsors of Radiate People. Radiate People is a peer group for those that have made the decision to be independent. And I'm going to talk more about that independent community towards the end of today's session as well. But with that, I like to get people starting to start talking. We've got birthday wishes coming through on chat. So if you're not in the chat, if you haven't already seen those, Sarah, so feel free to note you're getting some awesome birthday wishes. But we're here to talk about teams. And so for us to get in your heads and to start thinking about, when you think about a good team, when you think of your best team experience, give it one word. What would be one word that you would use to describe your very best team experience? And Sarah, as we wait for people to comment in the chat, what would your one word be?
I would say magical.
Ooh, that's a great word. I like the ones that are coming in. We've got invigorating, diverse, energy, winning, engaged, supportive. I love this. My word was connected. I feel like this idea of connection, and I don't know if it's probably just because it's one of my favorite things. Other words we're seeing: collaborative, lots of collaboratives, positive, fun, innovative, supportive, inclusive, another collaborative, trusted, inspiring. These are great words. I mean, and it's good to think about this idea from the beginning as we're talking about taking back teams, is I think the other part that I'm noticing is you all very quickly were able to come up with, think of a team, right? You were able to think of what that team looked like, and you were able to come up with a word of what that team felt like, which means you at some point have been on a highly positive team experience. But Sarah, when we talked about the idea of even the topic, the name for today, taking back teams, do you want to talk about kind of where, like, are you seeing a shift happening in the world around these positive team experiences that people are thinking about and where we're at today?
I feel that when I looked at the corporate space, coming in as an outsider, which I'll kind of get into a little bit, I felt that a lot of people were struggling with their teams, the just not being able to authentically connect, not having a strong foundation of trust, or if there was, it still felt like there was sometimes unspoken things or people being silent at tables when a discussion was happening. And as I have gotten into this space more, I think that there's just such a wide variety. There's a lot of really great people that have made a lot of great progress with how teams are done, but I still think that there's so much that you don't know what you don't know, is even possible. And I think that's the space that I love to play in. So when I use the word magical, that's truly what some of my best team experiences have felt like, where your brain is on fire and your heart is open, and you're making things come together that haven't been connected before, and you can only do it because of the people that you're in the room with. It would have never happened without them, and I think that's the experience that I just love seeing happen in people.
I love that. Well, I want to just call out, this is our team. So last week, Thursday, the Lakeside team had the great privilege of going to Sarah's new space, having our own team-based experience. And as you can tell from the ridiculous amounts of laughter and smiles, and I'm pretty sure we all at some point talked about the fact how much our face hurt for at least another day after the fact. Thank you, Abby. Yeah, she's still laughing too. But that this was an opportunity for us to really recognize that this was an opportunity for us to really get to know each other. The timing of it couldn't have been more perfect. We had 5 new people join the team in the last 2 months. And so this opportunity for everyone to get a chance to connect and get to know each other was just totally great. And we'll talk more about what Sarah's building, but I wanted to just set with the stage of like, really, what does fun, team, inclusive, brain on fire? I think I've already quoted you on brain on fire today, Sarah. So that one's the case. So when Sarah and I started to prep for today's call, I'm going to, if you, those of you that haven't met or had conversations with Sarah in the past, you're going to recognize that she is this beautiful combination of like just enough like whimsy and just enough super brainy intelligence. Like it is this beautiful combination of things that come together. And so when her and I were talking, I felt like I was getting schooled. Like I felt like in my own space, I was getting schooled. And so we started to talk about the different themes that we were considering as we talked about what we wanted to talk about today. And I thought, we're all going to take everybody back to school. So we're going to have a school-based Lakeside chat. I know that's exactly why everybody sent their kids off to school and thought that that's what they were coming to, an hour's worth, but it's 1 hour's worth of school. You can do anything for an hour. And we're going to do 4 different lessons. So we're going to kick off with class number 1, and that is geography. Sarah, do you want to talk a little bit about kind of why we're starting with geography, and then I'll jump over to the slide around sort of some of the learnings you had around being in different physical locations.
Yeah. So for me, this whole journey started around the globe. I grew up thinking I was going to be a humanitarian most of my life, and I visited many different places, and they all had such a big impact on me because of the people and the lenses in which I was able to view things. So when we were talking about just even the team aspect, these are some of the most interesting, I think, people dynamics that really shaped me and prompted me on the journey that I am on. So we thought geography would just be a fun way to start. And who
Awesome.
doesn't love a little geography? I mean,
You had me at a globe, I'm pretty sure. And I think the one thing, as you and I've had conversations ongoing, is this idea of we don't all get the opportunity to be and see in those spaces too. So having opportunities to learn from people like you who have traveled and have given yourself that luxury of some degree of being able to be in spaces and learn from those spaces. I love the idea of getting to learn vicariously through the experiences that you've had. Do you want to talk about this side, sort of this journey piece of where your story has taken you?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I thought most of my life I was going to be a humanitarian. I was 14 years old when I first convinced my parents to let me go with a group without them to Mexico. And we were there over Christmas, working with a women's prison. So I was 14 years old, sitting on a dirt floor in Mexico in a prison and feeding these prisoners tamales and just listening to their stories of why they were there and how they had got there. And I just remember thinking, like, these are genuinely good people that were stuck in really terrible circumstances. And it just kind of shifted this lens that I had previously of maybe some sort of like judgment, not, I hate to say it like that, but I feel like in some thing in my mind, it's like, oh, it's, justified. I'm not saying that you excuse, any sort of behavior, but it just helped me, I think, see people in a much different way. So I was a little bit older, 16, and I went to the Ukraine, and I was working with an orphanage there. There's a lot of children that had been orphaned, and a lot of these kids would go into the sewers because the fumes would help them not feel hungry. It would fill kind of their stomachs and they wouldn't feel the amount of hunger because a lot of these kids are starving. And it was just one of the most heartbreaking things. And I was at the time, again, like similar ages to them. And I just, again, had this shift of, as you mentioned, privilege and just this ability to peek into the lives of someone else so much different than me. And again, going, wow, these are really good people, people that we'd normally write off as addicts or, something like that. And it just comes from such a fundamentally human place of just survival. And that just was able to give me another lens. As I got a little bit older, I went to Thailand and I did humanitarian relief there. And this was after the tsunami in 2005. And so we were doing a lot of that relief. But then I also went up to Pattaya, which is the prostitution capital of the world. And I was working with some of the prostitutes that were on the main strip. And we would go to the bars and invite them to English class because they could learn English, get better jobs. So as I was sitting there, again, I'm 17 years old. I was raised in a very small town in, north of the Twin Cities. I had been homeschooled. Like I wasn't completely naive. I had done a lot of travel, but I will never forget. And I'm a person that believes in your emotions are your guide. You don't always act on them, but I think that they're very important. So I, at some point in a conversation, am highly likely to like tear up at some point. And this one always gets me. I was sitting at a bar, and this young girl who was much younger than me told me that she had been coming to the bars with her mom since she was a little girl. And I just remember, again, like just this big shift in what we had judged women in and on, and just going, wow, like this is something that is just so foreign to me. And at the time, it was still like internet cafes where like you go to like the dial up to look at the internet. So there wasn't a lot of information about this. So just some of these like moments really stuck with me. And as I got older, I kept thinking, I'm going to go back, I'm going to do more humanitarian work. But in the meantime, I had kind of started working and got into school. I got married. I had 2 kids. I was kind of doing the checklist things. And in the meantime, I ended up getting divorced, being a single mom. I got this opportunity to go back to Thailand and work with a sex trafficking rescue. I did that for a year, and then I came back to, again, corporate America, and I was working in employee benefits. And so I was going to all of these different employers and, having all of these conversations about culture. In the meantime, I had started bringing people on trips to Thailand, anyone that wanted to. I had tried to get, funding from some religious groups that I was with, but because I wasn't doing religious work, it was more of sex rescue, safe homes, sustainable food and water type things. There wasn't a lot of financial support. So I literally started just asking people who wanted to come to fund their portion, and then an extra portion would fund the project. So we would go and just have all these fun experiences because I had lived there, and show them all of these amazing things that they got to do, like jump from waterfalls and learn how to drive scooters on the left side of the road. And it was this mix of like fun, but also deep, passionate work. And I saw such transformational experiences, not just within the people that we were going to, but on the teams, people that would have normally never talked to each other. Like we have people on completely different ends of every spectrum possible, coming together, cheering each other on, and really seeing the good in each other. And I thought, wow, like these corporate teams really need to go on some of these trips. It would just help so many of these challenges that so many are facing. And that's where I first got the idea to start hosting some of these trips and opening it up to corporate America. And as I started looking at like the feasibility of that, just the time, the money, unfortunately, it is one of those things that you start looking at safety and liability and all of these things from the corporate standpoint. For me, I'm like, I'll lead anyone, but I started thinking, how can I make this more accessible to people? How can I make this more accessible to teams? Because I was seeing such I think, chronic stress. I was seeing so much chronic frustration and lack of connection in the workspaces. And I started realizing that my projects weren't just global. There was so much that was happening within my own hometown, within our own home state and country, that needed help too. So as I started kind of studying all of these different elements that were happening on these trips, that were people constantly encountering fear or discomfort, they had a choice to either overcome it and use courage, or they would back down. And I noticed that the people that were like overcoming it, that were finding that ability to just rise to the challenge, were having these transformational moments. Like I had people come back and say, I thought I could never do this. And I find that people just were constantly underestimating themselves. And so it was just so beautiful to watch this almost metamorphosis. And I thought I can just lead retreats for teams and someone else has the curriculum, surely. Like there's so many people out there. But what I kept running into was that people would have a curriculum based on more corporate speak, and the experiences and the adventures and the challenges were seen almost like a fun thing. And to me, that was the thing. And I'll get into that a little bit later, but it was those moments, those adventures, those were the time when your brain is the most active and it's connecting synapses in your brain pathways. It's literally rewriting your brain. And no one was doing that. So I was like, oh, I guess I'm writing a curriculum. So, fast forward a couple of years, I've now worked with a lot of teams and gotten into corporate training. But looking back at the sequence of all of this, throughout all of it, I kept coming back to the same principle that people are genuinely good. They want to get it right. We just so many times get kind of stuck and trapped within our own minds. And that's something that I continue to teach in teams with. Still do retreats, I still do offsites, but now, like where Erin and her group went, I opened a team training space as well to have intentional challenge and experiences that are constantly rewriting the pathways in people's brains.
Right, so I want to shift as we start to think about some of these other classes that we want to get to, right? So I want to talk about default reaction. So this idea, as Sarah sort of talked about, your lens that we approach it with. And part of it is you only get the purview that you get, right? Like the idea that whatever parts of you that come together are the parts of you that you show up with, right? So whether you've had an opportunity to be in Mexico or you haven't, if you grew up with privilege or you didn't, right? Those are you are who you are, right? There's a piece that you can't change, that background piece of it. So I want to talk about default reactions. So when things get tense, so when you're in a situation and things get tense, what is your default? Is your default to lean in to the tension? Is your default to pull back from tension? Or are you the make everything pretty? Like, are you the smooth it over person? Sarah, what would you say is your knee jerk or our default? As I think about all you've done, right? The idea of just sort of jumping right in. I have a feeling I know, but I'm like curious if you would identify this way.
I think it's situational Overall, I would say that I tend to pull back. Just being an introvert, I like to think things through, and sometimes I'll use that as my crutch to kind of just back away from things because it feels safer to me.
Okay. I think I immediately am a smooth it over person, but I'm not afraid of a lean in. I feel like I'm probably less of a pullback, probably more. Paula says totally wear emotions on her face. Oh gosh, Paula, you and I can play poker with you, Paula, because I am the same. But when everyone knows I'm pulling back as I wrestle with emotional reaction of a stressor. Ray talks about humor as his tension of being able to use humor to de-escalate. I think that's appropriate, and we see that one quite a bit. Deb talks about observing before, but with attention, with an ability to go to lean in. Becky, you go quiet. Such a, I think we feel like we'll have to unpack that one. Be calm in the storm. I think these are great conversation pieces as we start to think about that default component, which is why I want to talk a little bit about the science behind it. Now we've traveled the world and we've recognized what having that worldly purview, or at least recognizing what lens you show up with, comes into the conversation when it comes to your team-based piece of it. But there's biology behind this too. There's science that's working with us at the same time. Sarah, do you want to talk a little bit about the science part of taking back your team?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, I just saw so many people that were genuinely good and trying to get it right.
Get it.
Oh, is he adding a comment or no?
Who's the person?
Sure.
Like they're on mute.
I can talk over someone.
Talking. I'm going to figure it out.
Okay. Yeah. So, the science behind it, a lot of times we have biological survival mechanisms. We have two brains. And what I saw a lot of is in corporate, we teach the knowing brain. It's the thinking brain. And it loves knowledge, it loves strategies, frameworks, different things like that. It makes us feel very good. And we have a lot of it, and it's rewarded very highly in a lot of corporate spaces, but also in the United States. But then we have an older system, and that's our responsive system. And that runs on default. It runs on survival, and we tend to act in different ways. So when I started looking at all of the different symptoms that were in so many different places, I started seeing maybe like burnout. It's the same people kind of absorbing the pressure, and we even maybe have some people, it's like, oh, we jump in and we have to be the one that's kind of expected to make sense of everything. Some people will disengage, maybe they'll bleed, go back. Avoidance as a threat response, like to stay safe. Sometimes there's decision drift, where no one really wants to talk about something or hold anyone accountable because that feels mean, or it feels like you might cause someone to get upset, or it could fall back on you. And then just training that doesn't stick, just seeing so many different symptoms of training happening and continuing to go in the thinking brain, but really not looking at the responsive brain. And anytime that there's pressure or stress, and this includes when everyone's getting along, you don't want to be the one to rock the boat or upset it or change that dynamic. So there can even be pressure on nice teams. That responsive system takes over and it overrides everything. So I really started looking into the system that was beneath all of these symptoms and what that looked like. So the next slide, I can go into that a little bit more. So there's a couple of different processes in our responsive brain, and we don't talk about this very much. There's not a lot of information, so some of this might be new. Again, refer to this slide. But it is a different way of looking at your own responses, but also your team's responses as change happens and uncertainty. It's actually coming at us faster than ever before. Like our bodies, our brains were not designed for this level. So our brain is primarily a prediction system. It's constantly scanning for patterns and trying to predict what's going to happen next to keep you safe. And there are 5 main fears, but 2 of them are a little bit more physical, like existential, like fear of extinction, and physiological, like physical safety, not wanting to suffer, needing food, things like that. Then there's 3 that are social, and that's what I talk about most in the workplace, where a lot of our focus on. And I always remember it as we swim in a sea of fear. And this is separation, the loss of connection, ego death, the loss of credibility, and autonomy loss, which is the loss of control. So anytime that your brain is trying to predict something and it senses there's an error, like you're not going to be safe or something is at risk. Someone, if you say that, someone's going to think you're stupid or they're going to think that you don't belong here because everyone else agrees except for you. This is where we start to get into maybe a lot of group think or people not wanting to risk their reputation to speak up for something. Our brain does kind of a risk analysis of, is it worth it? Is it not worth it? And all of that kind of goes back to, what are we trying to protect? So Carl Jung said we must make the unconscious conscious, or it will direct our lives and we will call it fate. And when I think about that, I think about what we're trying to protect. Fear has a lot of really great intentions, and it's like connection is important. Coherence of a group, being credible is important. It helps us really want to do a good job and get better. And control is a good thing where we are able to help shape what happens because it matters to us. But right now, because of our brains not being able to adapt at the same rate as technology and society is moving, we're getting so many prediction errors, and our brain is constantly scanning for these threats, and we are defaulting to a lot of our like primary patterns, which is our pattern problem. And this is once a threat is assessed, the primary response is avoidance. That's the preferred one because it's energy saving, which from an evolutionary standpoint, it's like you might need this energy to go fight a bear later or something like that. So our brain, is trying to conserve energy. But because maybe our roles require it, our jobs or the situation requires it, it falls on you. So then people sometimes will go in with a static. And static engagement is where you have all of these threats that you're aware of, but you're managing them and you're managing them really well. It's usually with control. So I think of it like going in with like your fists up, like you're ready to box. And we have different ways of doing that, right? The other one that we could do is fawning. So we sometimes will say things as nicely as possible, but really play it down. So there's kind of a range of ways that we deal with it when we're forced to. But where we really want to get is into that dynamic engagement. And that's where you can go in knowing, okay, yes, thank you, brain. Like I understand what's at stake, but you can shift and think, what can I learn from this? How can we grow from this? How can we come together and make something bigger than ourselves through this conversation? How can we have those conversations and how can we do it together without that constant fear and that constant threat? So one of the things that I think we do is we have a lot of these fear or like protective instincts, and we have feelings about them. Okay, we want to protect our credibility because we feel maybe if we don't protect our credibility, that might say something about our character. Or if we can't control an outcome, it might mean that we're not good at what we do. So our brain kind of makes these our personality. And so many times when people come in to learn or grow, we have such a hard time with changing that because we've survived so long on these patterns and we found ways to feel safe and to navigate in a way that feels like, oh, this is who I am. This is how I deal with things. People know me as the nice person, or people know me as the one who handles things. And to step outside of those feels very bad for our limbic system. So these are survival strategies, and I think it's just really important for everyone to know that so much of this shouldn't have shame around it. I know with teams, we'll do one exercise where people kind of share something that is a little personal with them, and it's amazing to see what comes out of it. Like, oh, does anyone have imposter syndrome? Does anyone, overthink everything? Does anyone struggle with perfectionism? Is anyone really hard on themselves? And so many people will have these different things that we tend to either feel shame around or lose sleep around. And so much of this is just our brain trying to keep us safe. That's really biological. So when you think about that as an individual, you have like your one way of dealing with it. But when it comes to teams, those things start compounding and layering on each other. And you start getting bigger patterns that make change very hard. It makes hard conversations or navigating uncertainty where everyone's just kind of like, wait, we're not sure what to do. But then a couple of people will jump in and be like, no, we got to do this. So there's all these different dynamics, and then you start getting people with burnout or people that are disengaging, and those patterns are hard to shift. So most problems actually start with this prediction in your brain that's erroring out because of what it's trying to protect. It's not actually a problem. It's a prediction that people are already making in their minds that they're just not aware of. So that's some of the science.
Yeah, thanks. And I mean, this was, I would say, this was one of the exercises, like as Sarah said, our team did this, had the conversation in a more intimate space around our kind of our default when it comes to our fear, like what fears show up. And I recognized as I was having my own experience that like I have two that show up differently. I have when I'm as a parent, my family fear is my fear of separation. And we probably could unpack that about 72 different ways. But the idea that, especially as I've got a 17-year-old that's taught, we're trying to get ready to flee the nest, right? Like that separation fear is strong for me right now. And I can totally see myself in those people pleasing formalities to sort of manage that separation fear because of that, what's happening there. But at work, how I show up at work, mine is my ego death is my bigger fear, right? Like I worry about credibility. I worry about loss of credibility. And it's interesting to recognize what I left. I mean, I went back and reviewed about that content coming out of it because it was a really good reflection of me of how I show up differently in different situations as well. So I encourage you to sort of take some of this, and again, you'll get the slides as well, but to really think about where are your defaults and kind of where and maybe even what are the scenarios by which they show up. Because to me, it was really an eye-opening exercise of self-reflection. I want to get you guys talking again. All right, so if someone new joined your team tomorrow, so if they were, again, as I talked about, even just our team last week, right? We had 5 new people join in the last 30 days. What would they learn about your culture in their first 30 days? What would be something that you, whether they good, bad, or ugly, no, there's no bad answer here. But if someone was new joining your team and you decide what that team looks like, right? If it's your family team, if it's your work team, if it's your, I know some of you are in the consulting space, if it's the team you're working with right now, what would be something they would learn about the culture that you're in that first 30 days? Sarah, I have answers, but I would love to hear your reaction to this question as we wait for people to chat and to answer in the chat.
I think it would probably be very interesting. I do things so differently, and that can be a good thing and it can be an overwhelming thing or a very uncomfortable thing for a lot of people. I think with anything, there's an upside and there's the offset.
Yeah. The comments are coming in. How we do things matters. Such a great response. Conditions and results. Priorities change fast. I think that's a good one too. Recognizing how speed is playing a part of it. Inviting, welcoming. Abby, I'm going to read your R's, so you get good ones. Thank you. Being super supportive of one another. That's great. We're a team that works in silos and craves collaboration and creates creative solutions. What an interesting juxtaposition of two things, right? Working in silos, but craving collaboration. Paula, thank you for sharing. High care and support, friendly of people caring for one another. Beautiful descriptions. Abby, obviously, her and I work together, so I'm thankful that she wrote what she wrote. I would say one of the things I think shows up really quickly are our values. I think that we live our values and we talk about our values on a pretty regular basis, and that they're not just words on a wall. I think that's one of the things that even from a lens that we have is that we really are deliberate about what those words are and how we weave them in into the culture on a regular basis. I say this because we are now moving into creative writing. So you are now in your third, you've already halfway through the day. You can have a lunch break if you need to. But we are now in third period in the concept of creative writing. Because this is part of what's happening behind the scenes, right? Is the storylines that we're creating for ourselves. Sarah, do you want to talk about how creative writing, how this concept of creative writing and storytelling play a part in the team component?
Yeah, absolutely. So our brains are very dramatic, and there are no exceptions. This is what your brain does automatically. These steps that I talked about, these three steps with prediction, protection, and this projection happens within like half of a second. Anytime that there's a little bit of like a disconnect or uncertainty, your brain runs this. It's so you there's no shame about this. This is just what it does. So first it's gonna kind of write a story. Before you even have a full picture, your brain narrows because it doesn't really know the difference between an angry coworker or an upset coworker coming at you and a bear. It's like there is danger and it uses the same neural pathways. So what it does is your brain narrows to the most immediate things around you and makes a plan for escape. So a lot of times it will tell you a quick story. It's going to fill in gaps with like the most protective story that it can, not the most accurate one. And a lot of times it will go to the extreme. It's like kind of an all or nothing kind of thinking of like, this person absolutely hates me and is probably planning my demise somewhere. Like it's like very extreme. When really this person is maybe not even upset at you. It might just be frustrated with the situation. But we tend to have a brain that will make all these different assumptions or fill in stories and kind of get creative with the story that it writes. Sometimes we'll talk ourselves out of it. I think we probably have enough people on this chat that are self-aware and have done some of that work, that leadership work, to go, wait a minute, I feel like maybe this isn't right. I need to rethink my thinking. Maybe I need to stay curious and ask some questions. So that's a really good step towards pushing back against the projections and what's happening. But not everyone around us has that ability. So it's also important to understand while you might have that skill, the instinct that has driven people for many, many years is to take that story, that projection, and to run with it. So on teams, this can, escalate very quickly. Looking at just the symptoms or like the behaviors on the top and kind of backing down to like, okay, what is my brain telling, or what is your brain telling you? What is it trying to protect? And just getting really clear about why something like that feels like it's at a threat right now or uncertain is a really good step for teams. But this is kind of what our brain does with the projection phase. So it gets very, very dramatic. Does anyone else have a dramatic brain?
Oh no, I'm like sitting here going like, I want to do like raise of hands if this totally sounds like you. Like I'm sitting here going like how quickly my brain can can you make this big elaborate or
Yeah.
can create 14 scenarios. Like it's almost like my brain is writing its own choose your own adventure book in the vein of creative writing, right? Like,
And it
well, if
does
they
this
say
to
this,
protect
they must
you.
mean this. If they say this, then we go down this path. If I do this, then, and it's that it's amazing how crazy the brain can sort of take you down a path. And apparently me and Julie are thank you, Missy. I'm like, apparently me and Julie are the only ones here with the crazy brains that are
And
writing great.
again, like so many good, talented people, but this isn't about what we know. This is our responsive system. So people have asked, what kind of teams do you work with? And I'm like, literally anyone with a brain, because this is constantly running in our own minds and in other people's minds. And what it does is it drains so much of our brain power and our energy that we're running around in circles trying to figure out the exact perfect way to approach something, what we're going to say, how to control the narrative, or how to control an outcome, that we don't have that as much energy to actually sit down with someone and put that energy into a solution or into building something better and bigger. So it really is our brain working against us at a certain point. And just knowing like, okay, it's trying to help me, thank you, but I actually want to now switch my energy into something more productive and work with my team on this. And that's where we start learning how to trust each other when we don't say something perfectly, but we look for what they're trying to say. When we can approach someone not having an answer and knowing, oh, they're not going to freak out. I can trust them to do the hard things with me. Three
I
times
love
this morning, Erin, you're not alone. Oh, yeah, this is completely normal. And I think that there's sometimes shame where we get really hard on ourselves, like, I should have known better, or, oh, I hate that I do this. It's so normal. And that's the first step, is just being aware that this is what your brain is doing. And it's in its creative writing period. And you need to like ring the bell.
Yeah. We need class to be over. I think that that's what we're saying. And let's do that. Let's move on to the last and final class. So now you get to start grading yourself, because again, we wouldn't be in school if we didn't at least give an opportunity for a little bit of a report card. So before we get into math class, I want to give you guys that you get to sort of pre-grade yourself. So if you had to give yourself a grade right now based on how you show up for your team, what grade would you give yourself? And again, you can chat it, you can think about it, you can pre-think about it, you can think about how you might capture this information, but I want you to start thinking about how you might grade yourself in terms of you being an active participant in the team that you want it to look like. Giving ourselves a lot of B's here so far. A minus, I like it. Nobody's willing to go all the way, give themselves that full. Becky, I love it. Not sure. Okay, she has a quote the other day. Not sure if I'll get this right, but it's something like, "Why do we overthink negative thoughts? We should shift and overthink the positive thoughts." Oh my God, so true. So
Because
true.
those threats can kill you and your brain doesn't know the difference. So it's trying to help you. It is trying.
All right, we are at the last final stretch. We are getting to math. And math, I'm sure you guys are all thinking like, well, wait, we've already done science and brain stuff, but there's got to be some math here too. Sarah, let's talk about the math.
Yeah. So when I use the word magical for teams, and I really felt that when I first led a group to Thailand to fund, um, it was a playground for kids that have been rescued from sex trafficking, and it was little kids. And we always would go to these organizations and say, what do you need to get to the next level? We didn't want to come in with our own ideas or assumptions. This one person said, we just want them to be kids and they don't have a safe place to play on our property. And so there's just a lot of risk with going out. And if you've ever been to Thailand, like a lot of their stuff is metal and rusty and it's kind of dangerous and borderline very sketchy. And so they're like, can you bring us a playground? And so I'm like bawling. I'm like, yes, like I want to do this. And I remember in that moment in Thailand, looking at the kids like coming out like they were unleashed from the home that they were staying in. They all ran to this playground and they're laughing and the giggles and the shrieks and just the sound of childhood. We are my entire team. We're all just bawling. And my brother, who led the trip with me, came over and it's like put his arm around me. He's like, you did that. And I remember just being like, no, like this would not have been possible without the insane like courage and belief and generosity of this entire team. And so when that really shifted some of the way that I thought, because being an introvert and seeing even a lot of ineffective teams, my math was division. And it was kind of this first one where I was like, when there's people, I have to slow down. Take the time to explain things. It actually makes things harder because then there's misunderstandings. And so my mindset was that, oh, I'm just an independent or I'm just introverted, and not realizing like the what I was missing on a team, because the math just never quite mathed for me. Sometimes people think of it like in terms of subtraction, like it's not like terrible results, but it's a little bit slower. It's kind of like net zero, like you give some, you get some. But some people have experienced maybe a good situation where it's like, okay, my skill plus your skill equals something I couldn't have done before. And that's great. But I think when we are at our highest, best selves, we multiply. We come up with a greater sum than the entire part of the group. It's not 1 + 1, it's equals 2. It's 1 + 1 equals 3. Like it's so much bigger than I can do, than you can do. And it's this magic that really comes out of multiple people with different perspectives, sharing insight, being willing to say the hard thing. The number of times that people have challenged my thought or my assumption that I didn't even realize I was making shifted my life. They shifted the way I did business. They were my blind spots. And creating the space for people to say things like that, sometimes it's very hard because you want to be like, wait a minute, like, no, that's not right, because our brain is trying to protect ourselves. It wants us to be seen as good. But that multiplication, it really is that magic. And I know we call it math, but I call it magic. It depends on how much you like math, I guess. Um, but so many times, I think when we look at teams, a lot of people think of maybe division or subtraction. If we're being honest, like I just think from what I've seen, there's a lot of that in the back of their minds. And you like each other,
Mhm.
but maybe we talk about silos, or maybe you like each other, but you kind of keep having the same frustrating meeting and things don't change, so that in your brain, you're like, it's just easier to do it myself. If anyone here is like a parent and you're trying to teach your kids something, it's like, the end of a long day, you're like, I'm just going to do it myself, because it is so hard to like take that time. I think that we get that mindset sometimes with teams. So we'll delegate like little things here that don't really matter, but we really hold on to the things that we actually need to be wrestling with and communicating with and taking the time to figure out how to multiply everything that we have.
Yeah, I love that. And I think there's that piece too where you talk about, I mean, the team is the collective, right? It's the sum of its parts. So if we continue down this space of math, right? It is addition, right? Because it does, but I think it's interesting as we look at these as whole numbers. I think of what Missy said about the idea of if I'm not recharging my own battery, right? I'm an A unless I'm not fully charged, which means you're an A unless and when you're an A, you're a 1, right? You're coming in full as a full you're getting your whole person. But if you're not fully charged, or if you're not finding ways to make sure that you're protecting that whole person, then you're not showing up as a whole number. You're coming in as a 75 or a 0.25 or a half, right? And the whole number part makes a difference here too. And I think about how we show up as our whole person sometimes is a big piece of that first part of the equation, the front end of the equation, not just the back end, is because we have to remember how we're kind of, what number are we bringing into the equation as well.
Yeah. And I think an example that I saw this in myself, I was a part of many teams, and I would sit at the table and have so much to say. And again, I was an introvert, a quieter person. And so I would just kind of play that role, but I had so many insights, I had so many ideas. And I looked back, I was like, I could have saved so much time and money, but I didn't feel like there was like that space for me to speak up. And I think my knowing side knew it, but my responsive side was like, this isn't safe to say something. They're going to look at you like you're weird or you're new here. You don't have as much experience. They know better. And my brain was constantly talking me out of doing it because it didn't know how to handle if I was going to be the one to disrupt a meeting, even if it was really good, helpful information. So my knowing brain knew a lot of this stuff, even knew why I should speak up, but actually doing it is so much different because we have these instincts that are just so deeply wired, and that's what takes over in my responsive brain, was rationalizing it all and writing stories and projections. So like what I knew just kind of didn't matter. And I think that we see a lot of teams with different situations like this at the table. And like I said, it can even happen with really nice teams, because you don't want to be the one to disrupt something. You don't want to be the one to rock the boat. You like getting along. Peace feels good. You can conserve energy. But then we end up getting a lot of groupthink, or people that don't give direct feedback because it feels like it's being mean. And so just training people on our responsive brain, on our responsive like systems, and how to navigate that and to take those risks with each other is really where the growth and like that multiplication comes in.
Yeah. All right, Sarah. We're not nice teachers, are we? We are teachers that send people home with homework. Do you want to talk a little bit about the homework you want them to the reflection piece that you want them to do from leaving today's session?
Yeah. So I wanted to give you guys a couple of things to do that you could start doing to train with your team. Because again, there's a difference between awareness and knowing, but there's a difference between doing and actually training. Why I do experiences is because we're able to kind of take the blinders off to our own habits and we start seeing defaults. What happens when we know we're probably going to get something wrong or it's new and we don't know what's going to happen? We, have these default reactions that I teach people. But since you all can't be with me right now, I thought I wanted to give you some tips to start integrating a little bit more and training your team on how to contribute and collaborate a little bit more. So there's 3 different things. I think the biggest shift for leaders is to see that this is a system. This isn't personality. It's not culture. You're not a bad leader. This is just a moment to go, wow, there's something so much deeper here that is driving all of these different symptoms. And it makes it a little easier to deal with. So stop saying like, why aren't they performing? Start going like, what conditions are shaping this? It's like really big shift. So the first one is recognize. Notice when the room shifts, when energy drops, maybe the same people keep speaking up, agreement comes too fast. Those are all some indicators of defaults. So take, 5 minutes at the end of each day. I just set an alarm, reflect on your day and okay, where were people maybe defaulting? It takes a little bit to get in the habit and become more aware of it. But once you do, you start getting really good. The second thing is, after you've done that, start taking a step to interrupt their behavior in real time because you want to make them aware of it too. So you could say something like, I notice we all tend to go quiet when we might not all agree. I'd rather hear where we're not aligned than find out later. And just setting that out there, just constantly interrupting that inner monologue in their brain that's like spinning really fast and creating those 14 stories, right? And then another step you can take a little bit further than that is helping them reframe their beliefs. So again, kind of going back to the example of the nice team, because I think that we do have a lot of really nice teams in corporate, like it's kind of expected. So I use that stereotype the most. Reframing it by saying, when we hold back to keep the peace, we think we're protecting, but we're actually disconnecting from it. So what is one thing you'd put back on the table if this group could handle it? And just starting to reframe that for them. It's not actually protecting, we're holding back.
I love that. You've also are so sweet and are providing people with some information on their own default assessment. Do you want to talk about the assessment piece? And again, I know that all this information is going to come in the email following up as well.
Yeah, 100%. So I'm a total nerd and I created this default assessment that helps you look at the symptoms and it will articulate what they're protecting the most because most teams will value maybe one thing over another. Maybe they protect their connection the most. Maybe they're protecting their credibility the most. And then maybe they're, protecting their control. And then there's different pathways that they default to as a group. So this actually looks at the patterns and gives you an understanding of the system that's actually driving the symptoms because then we can start focusing on training those specific kind of distortions or stories that they're writing about connection or about control or about credibility. So I did drop the link in here if you want to go take that. It will give you immediate results and give you a little pathway of next steps.
And the questions are coming up, which is always great. The slide deck will be provided. The link to the training or the event today will be provided as a reminder as well. So if you missed that on the front end, yes, all of this will be provided on the back side. Sarah, do you want to talk a little bit about what you're up to as we jump into the closing this thing out for the last couple minutes? Tell us a little bit about what you're up to next, and then I'll tell everybody else about what's up and coming here with Lakeside as well.
Yeah, so I am continuing to teach teams about this and really digging into here's what's happening and then coming alongside of teams and training them through shifting those team patterns because you can change alone, but then there's so much energy and time that's kind of spent pulling each other along. So I love team training, but another way I can do that is through keynote speaking and teaching people that you're training the wrong brain and really getting people the information like I just shared today about what brain we're training. And we don't need more knowledge. We all know all the things. We've had all the trainings. So how do we actually shift and get people working together in more magical ways? And then also just with the age of AI, I think that we are comparing these defaults and these bad human experiences to the best of AI. And people tend to think that AI can replace people. But when we are at our best, when that responsive side is actually trained, that's where every breakthrough comes through that AI just cannot touch. touch because it doesn't know how to predict, it doesn't know how to collaborate and imagine things. It has a use, but we're actually competing with it a lot of times when we're using our thinking brain, and AI actually does it better. So we need to get better at the other parts of our brain that typically stem from the responsive side. So those are just a couple of topics that I use to educate different workplaces or different events.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. And thank you so much for sharing your, oh gosh, there's more. Sorry, I missed, there was
Actually, just
one
the
more.
last one. It's okay. It's just the last slide. To stop fighting biology, start training with it. Just an invitation to see what an experience with us is like. If you would like to bring your team in, it's super fun. We'll usually do something like improv or an art project and get everyone engaged. But then I also teach them what their responsive brain was doing in real time. So as Erin talked about, like it's a lot of fun. I didn't want to make learning boring or painful for people. And so I wanted to bring the best of the worlds together. So that's what training with us is like.
Perfect. And if you're a regular, you know that this is again, these Lakeside chats will continue into next month. So May 19th, Lakeside Chat, like I said, is the founding sponsor for Radiate People. Radiate People had their first event at the end of February, which many of you were invited to, and maybe even some of you attended. And we had a really great panel discussion called Stories from a Solo Journey that I am now bringing back. It was such a dynamic conversation in the room that we wanted to bring that to Lakeside Chat. So in May, we will have Suzanne, Brian, and Kelly here to talk about their stories through their own solo journey. And excited to have you guys here for that as well. But we have officially 60 minutes. We started at 9:01. It is 10:01. Sarah, have a happy birthday.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for joining me on my birthday.
Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for being here. Thank you for so much engagement. Again, I don't think I didn't say that on the front end, but my thing I often talk about on the backside of these Lakeside chats is just how much engagement we have in the chat and how much people are sharing and vulnerable and commenting and reacting and engaging throughout. So thank you all for being such active participants as well. Thank you. Have a wonderful day, Sarah. Let me know what they make you for dinner.
Sounds good. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Have a great day, everyone.